Everyone, we're live.
Hello, we're live.
Hello.
We're talking about the last session.
For once on chatWater, we're actually talking about the session before,
You know,
which is
it's funny
really
because
not
we used
our
to do
MO.
that. We used to.
We used to. Can be something we do again at some point. But you know, chatWater, we'll get there eventually.
No, we were talking specifically about Sean's moment that he shared with Callie about the how does it feel to heal people. And that moment was, I think, one of my favorite moments from any D&D stream or podcast or anything. Such a beautiful moment. But I had a minor moment of panic in myself when he asked that question, because I was like, I put myself in Lennon's shoes, and he asks this absolutely beautiful, poetic, deep question, and my immediate reaction was, how the fuck is Lennon going to respond to that? I was literally sitting there being like, I don't know what I'd say if he asked me that. It's such a beautiful question, and I don't know if I'm good enough to come. I was
let me tell you, I knew that I wanted
she
to...
dunked it. She dunked it.
This is
she
the
did
thing.
a fucking great job.
She did.
Because I knew I wanted to ask Callie about how it was. And so I meant to send her a message just to be like, hey, I don't want to spring this on you. Just have a think about what the actual thing. And I just never sent that message.
Gosh.
But I thought really hard about it. So when I asked it, I was like, oh no, I have not prepped her for this. And she just fucking swings back with this unbelievable...
so good. But there was literally, I felt panic in my heart when you asked that with how do you
answer that?
There's nothing in the manual about that, and how do you make it make sense? Because it's it can be quite a deep lore question, because you don't always just heal people you care about. You can heal other people. And she did a great job.
What I loved was that he asked her, Letters asked her specifically about lay on hands or healing hands. He didn't ask her about cure wounds or that kind of healing. He asked her about
paladin specific
healing and things that, or because healing hands is an ASMR trait, and then lay on hands is the paladin trait, or the paladin ability. So to me, I was just like, oh gosh, what a beautifully phrased answer to that question. She didn't talk about the yes, I use this healing magic to go and do this. She's like, no. She's like, I'm giving parts of myself to these people that I care about in those moments. And I think about times where Callie has used that healing, and it was just I was in tears. I don't know, there is...
Oh, we watched you cry.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I was just bawling through that whole conversation. It was just so fucking beautiful.
I think I was so taken aback by that and all the implications of everyone she's ever healed that I was like, there was when the thing goes through your head, it's ding, 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 and it slows to land on the question you're at. It just wouldn't stop. Where I was I need a follow up. So I was yeah, that's pretty cool. This scene needs to end now, because I was just I couldn't handle the implications of what it means to you're healing someone because you're focusing on the love you have for them. Yeah, that makes sense for fucking Kamea and Jar, but for just some random person that we've just met, which you do all the fucking time,
but she's also the kind of person who loves everyone you guys meet, instinctively.
That's when she did it on me. I was the fucking line. I was that hits different once you know what's going on under the hood. That was just Sean still reeling with that revelation into Callie's inner space.
And I get that. I, as someone who plays Neppy and another person who heals, and it's I not about cure wounds and stuff like that, but life transference. When Neppy uses life transference, that's a big deal. I don't just use life transference on everybody. So when she said that, I was yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's you're giving a part of yourself, and it's so fascinating too. And this is why I think Lennon is one of the most, it's such an honor to sit with her at the table, because she is for her, stepping into Callie is it's I mean, I can't speak what it's inside her head, but it feels it seems like it's breathing. You know what I mean? That answer was so genuinely Callie. There was nothing forced. It was oh man, I just was it was an honor and a privilege to kind of sit there and watch yourself, Sean, and Lennon have that scene together.
It's
like it's a privilege to sit at this table anytime, but like, man,
it's interesting
so
for me
beautiful.
because you, like, tonight's episode, for those who are wondering, are we going to talk about DM archetypes?
Yeah.
But I was thinking it's interesting in terms of like people who play and like the different styles that people bring. There are some people who play so intuitively. Like, I know Sean, and I know you play very intuitively as well, but you lean a lot on your acting schooling and like your experience, and like I know you think a lot about character and development and like all of these things, and you bring a sort of like craft to your characters.
Thank you.
But then there are some people who play and they just play like purely on instinct. Lennon is one of them. Like Matt's another great example of that, where they just like, the things they say are not things that they like plan. It's just an understanding that they have of their characters that is wonderful to see. Like it's something that I think once you start playing more, you realize how rare it is to find people who can so instinctively play a character.
It's been so just like mind-boggling to like, as someone who's been with this campaign from the beginning, like session 1, and present for like every session that we've had, I've seen the way that everyone in like who's currently sitting at this table has stepped into their characters and bloomed and grown in their characters, and like watching, Kokanee develop into the Kokanee we see him now, like, as he wasn't always this way, and that's of course dynamic character growth, but like watching, Matt's a very talented player, like fantastically talented player, and like watching his role play change and evolve over the years, and like, watching Lennon, like this is the first D&D game Lennon's played, like self-admitted, and like watching her become comfortable with the game and like comfortable to step in Callie, like, and I mean, even for myself, like I had played a campaign before this, but not at the same frequency. So to feel like there is space at this table and the support around us for it to be like, hey, you can blossom here. You can grow here as a role player and as this character, and it is safe and welcomed, and that vulnerability that you can bring to the table is honored and cherished and will be shown back to you in spades. It's fucking so cool. And it's like, it's candy to me. It's amazing. I love it.
And like in terms of things that we talk about, like people can take home and to their own games and things like that. I think that's like the biggest thing that you can bring to your like own home campaigns, is just that sort of level of openness and support to people's character choices and to their like wanting to role play things, because that safe space only happens when everyone is on board. And like it takes if people aren't comfortable and you give them the opportunity to show them like, hey, this is cool, like you're gonna get those same role play moments. Like we have a special group, but what makes our group special is not because each person is like crazy talented at role play. It's because the group makes each other safe enough to be human beings. You know what I mean? Like these are all things people inherently know. They're all feelings that people have experienced. And so I think it's more like the safety of your group that allows you to have these beautiful moments, rather than like being some amazing actor, because everyone can flourish when they're given like that wonderful environment.
And I think, we'll probably tie a lot of stuff in with what we talk about today, but it's also the culture of your table, which is by and large not totally shaped, but quite predominantly shaped by the DM you have, and what kind of space is created at the table, and their style and their approach and their the way that they interact with not only the game but the characters, the story, the role play. Like that kind of safety is that we have at our table is like fostered and encouraged by a DM who literally in that moment stepped back, did not intervene, but also like Tim has helped us shape this wonderful environment of this culture of like, if you do this stuff, if you bring this to the table, it might not be necessarily rewarded through like material, like gold or items or anything like that, but it is rewarded through rich story that you and a world that you get to interact with and play with. As the more we grow, the more the world grows. So it is like it's parallel processing, which I think is it's really cool.
And speaking of Tim sitting back and letting it happen, also knowing when to step in.
Yes.
Because like that moment of Clack just being like, I think what you're doing here is wrong.
God.
And then like,
fuck.
Because like, of course it is. And like, of course Clack would have to be the one to say it. Like,
yeah.
That was the fucking, we fucking, like, I follow, like, video games and stuff, and, like, it's all, like, moral, oh, there's such moral choice in this, are you Paragon or are you Renegade? I have never had a moral choice dilemma like this one.
That was unreal.
This fucking guy is not the problem, but someone might hack his brain. What do we do about that?
I want to, like, take a little, like, peek behind, like, the curtain for everyone else. I personally was, like, when that moment happened, I was, like, in my mind, I was, like, is this Tim trying to railroad? You know what I mean? Like influence the decision. Because, some DMs do that. When we finished the game, Tim was like, I loved that I could create this dilemma for you. And that's when I realized, like, Tim wasn't like trying to push you one way or the other. He was just trying to provide you with like equal, like, support for both options.
He didn't even create it though. Like, if you really think about it, we created the moral dilemma. Like,
I know, but like, he added to the like by playing the characters in, like, playing Clack one way and playing the Duragar one way, he added to the sort of like the stakes of each choice. Because if a lot of you guys have, like, not to sort of like take the meaning away from this one, but you guys have killed a lot of guys. Like, and a lot of people don't factor into the story that is Blackwater. You know what I mean? Like, D&D is a inherently sort of like violent game where people die. But the fact that he like created a personality for this guy and then had one of his NPCs speak out in his like against one of the player characters, it created this interesting like stakes on a character that maybe shouldn't have had it. You know what I mean? Like, you guys created some stakes and then he was like, okay, let's double down on this.
Yeah.
And like, but really,
and it's like, sorry, Sean, go ahead.
Oh, just what I loved about this is it's not about Golar.
No.
Like, this isn't about this guy. This was really about, like, who are we as Blackwater?
Yes.
And especially like coming off of the fucking Callie and Letters thing, like, I was like, fucking being mind controlled has changed Letters on a fundamental level. Yeah. And like, fucking when Matt and fucking Adam dropped the most salient points and like convincing arguments for like why we got to drop this guy, I was like, all right, fucking, like, yeah, I guess. Like I was upset that there was no other way. And I've just got take the reins.
Something that I think, I talked to Tim a lot about this, and it's Janet and Lennon and I had a huge conversation about that moral dilemma because we were all just like buzzing from that. And checking in with each other emotionally, be like, everyone doing okay? Like, I felt really, really good about the way that I played Neppy in that moment because I needed to play her totally neutrally because that's where she would stand. Like, having that sense of like watching, all of the people that she, like, most of the people in the, like, that she cares about the most in the world, like trying to figure out this decision, but being like, if it comes to it, let me make this, I have to do my job. I have to step in and this is my role, like, to arbiter a good death. Because that's her entire fucking thing. Like, one of her titles is the arbiter of the great balance. Like, that is her title. Like, it's in the long fucking epithet after her name. And it's like, I can't play her that she would want to kill him, because she didn't want to kill him. But if that came to it, it was like, okay, then we make this an honorable death. One that he would at least, not that not everyone wants to die, but some people will take death and will, like, in a fantasy world, will be like, okay, this is the way that I want to go. But like, the second Yana spoke up, and like it was just like, yeah, no, can't, I cannot, I couldn't. And like Jen, I think it's like another one of those things. And like Jen has these beautiful moments as Yana, where she comes in and it's almost just like someone throws a glass of water on your face and just kind of shocks you out of it. It's the same thing that happened after, that the battle with Velsum in the mansion, where she was gone and Finnan was gone. Another like a situation where somebody was mind controlled, and it was just like, no, like he would want us to be squabbling. He would want us to be this, to be his legacy, and we can't let him win like that. And to have, to Yana to come stay up and be like, hey, everyone needs to slow their roll because this is not who we are. I think it was just another beautiful moment in which Jen's voice could kind of come through as Yana and just be like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Every time Yana puts her foot down, I love it.
And I love it. I love it.
And she doesn't abuse it. She's like, so like, la la la, like I got my spooky spider and like everything's fine. But then when Yana takes a stand,
when Yana takes the reins,
yes,
it's because like she doesn't use it that often that it carries so much weight when she does.
Yeah.
No, I think it's really interesting because the other thing that's great about this specific dilemma was the fact that, we were in a situation where, like, when you put a party in a situation where you have a big bad, it's super easy for everyone to have aligned goals and aligned process, right? I often talk about like the Second World War it was concrete. Like a lot of people, there was like a bad guy, you know what I mean? Like the Nazis were bad. And so therefore it was like, exactly, there was like evil and good. And I feel like when a party's joined together, that you draw a line where it's like, this is the evil people and this is the good people. And what I find interesting is like we entered a dilemma now where there are people in the gray, and like there are people who are no longer like inherently evil. And like someone said something in this thing where I think it was Nepenthe. She said he worships Task, and you were like, no, but he's an actual god now. Like it's like an actual religion. It's not just like a bad guy that he looks up to. Like you're talking about persecuting a religion because you don't agree with it. Yes. And that's like a different level. And like the great thing about it is it puts the group at odds in a way that most groups don't get put at. You know what I mean? Because usually there's a bad guy and a group is super easy for them to align their goals. And now all of a sudden they have to talk about and sort of like consolidate their differences and their different ways of doing things and figure out whether or not like they can work together to achieve. I mean, they all want to achieve the same goal in the end, but like how they achieve it. And I think that's the beauty of this dilemma is it wasn't just a bad guy you were talking about killing. It was just a guy you talked about killing.
And also, like, we don't know that Task is inherently bad. Erkin, bad dude. Task, not necessarily also, a bad guy.
Like, correct. Like, fill me in here, Lore Keeper.
Thank you.
But Erkin stole from you, but he wasn't he didn't necessarily do inherently bad things, did he?
Nope.
So, like, I mean, you can't really even label him inherently bad. Like, he stole.
We know he's a demon.
Yeah, we know he's a devil, technically.
Devil, excuse me. Maybe not all devils are inherently bad, but they do literally come from hell.
And I think of all the people whose lives he's like taken in this process, and like those people who sit in platinum in his bedroom that he looks on in pain.
So, question.
He also, and this is important, dresses up as kobolds and plays dirty little pranks on them, like, which I would do too, but that's bad.
Question. Do you think that Adonis was friends with regular Erkin or Rakshasa Erkin? Because he knew him, like he took over the building. So do you think Adonis knew?
Let me just zoom out for a second, because I think we can all agree Adonis has definitely partied with demons and devils, right?
For sure.
Like,
for sure.
Adonis fraternizes with everybody, right?
Yeah, he's chaotic, neutral to the core.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he might have known.
I don't think it's a big far stretch that he's like, oh yeah, that guy, he's just a freaky tiger man. Never did anything crazy, just loved his platinum. Like,
and
that,
like 100%. I fully agree. Like fully agree. I think because Adonis is an angel. Like
literally and figuratively.
Literally and figuratively. So I learned Tim and I have been writing some like deep lore about the terrace, world and its creation, kind of more creation myths and stuff. So when you start hearing about the way that the world is created, things start to make a bit more sense. But I can't share that. It's not mine to share. Knowledge I don't have at the table. So I can't speak about it too much there until we make it more public. But thinking about the way that this world works and like things we also know about Urkin, just as as a whole. In the Adventures in Amun-K one shot that we had for Tim's birthday last year, which was when we first learned about who Malsav Bakal is and the phylacteries and all of that kind of spooky's pants being bad, Falcon getting sucked into a donjon, all of that kind of stuff. The shop that we went into was Urkin's Antiques. So like Urkin in some shape or form has been around for a very long time. Whether it was that Urkin, whether he's been, but the Urkin who was in that store was an elven man. So whether that was Urkin or just someone who worked there, like I think my theory is that Urkin has been around for a very long time and has been a rakshasa in other people's clothing for a very long, because that mine has been empty for like 2376, and that was in so like 1600 years that mine has been empty.
Long time.
The ruins of Searing Dune have been empty. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
So that was quite the riff on the intro there. So we're 20 minutes in. Let's roll the intro.
Yeah, we should roll the intro.
And then we'll dive into DM archetypes.
Oh, I'm sure something we're going to be. Yeah, no. We'll
wait. One more thing. I just got to say, you know what was really fucking cool talking about like good play, role play, and allowing for space? The party decided on something, and then fucking Callie and Tim like still dealt with like the repercussions of, oh no, we still haven't been told that this is going to be okay, and we're dealing with this. And then when you left, we still dealt with it, and like that level of commitment to committing to like, oh, I know that he's not going to die, but like we're still going to process believing that he would, like, and like Callie and fucking Clack are just going to sit outside the thing because they don't have the thing to get in the door, and they're just going to sit there as like some dude just gets like murked by fucking Neppy, like, and they just took the time to like do that, and that was juicy. Okay, roll that clip.
Roll that intro.
Let's do it. What are we talking about today, Am? Give us the goods.
First, we're going to talk about some sponsors and some announcements.
They sponsor us, yes.
So I want to shout a big thank you to our sponsors and partners, Silverwing Armory, makers of fine paper products. Please go check them out, silverwingarmory.ca, and there's an Etsy shop. They're doing a partnership with Grimbeard Leather that is going to be starting in the fall. It is just, books for your lore keeper, please. Go get some campaign notebooks for yourself, your DM, person in your party who takes notes. They are fantastic. They are very inexpensive and really, really high quality and customizable. Another shout out to our amazing artist, Tiana. She is the best and we love her to bits and pieces. I was chatting with her the other day and she is very, very excited to get started working on our level 15 art, even though we're not at level 15 yet. She's like, I feel it coming. So she's really wanting to get started on those.
I don't think she can get started until we achieve level 15, because every episode something happens. Like day to day, Kokanee could have a beard or not.
This is so true. So
like,
true. He hasn't grown a beard yet. No beard yet.
I keep thinking about like what I'm gonna ask from her, and I just can't commit to anything because fucking I wouldn't have known that. We just don't know who we're gonna be day to day. Like,
and she's ready for that, and we love her for it.
We love her for it.
I think her commissions are still open. So if you're interested in getting some art done by her, please DM her. She is an amazingly talented artist and also a gem to work with. She will like really help you refine the kind of art that you're looking for your characters and is open to a lot of stuff. So just like, please go talk to her. Keisha over at Fairy Dragon Dice. She has made beautiful polyhedral dice for us for each of our games, inspired by our characters. She created them from scratch at her beautiful workspace in Duncan, BC, and she has some dice up in her shop right now. She had a release a little while ago, so please head on over to her site to go pick them up to bring some of her beautiful math clacks into your home. Finally, our other sponsor partner is Legendcraft, legendcraft.ca. They are makers of fine wood products. We are so excited to be doing a giveaway with the Purple Heart rolling rod. You can see the photo up on our Instagram. It's a really easy contest to enter. All you have to do is head on over to Instagram, like the photo, follow us at Blackwater D&D, follow Legendcraft, and then if you feel like it, tag some friends in the comments. Every other comment is an extra entry. If you want to have some bonus entries, you can at any time during the chat tonight enter the hashtag Legendcraft for an extra entry, and I will make sure that I pick that up. And our winner will be drawn on September 19th. Yanis.
Only enter that once.
Only enter that once.
You don't get more.
Don't spam
you don't get
the chat
more.
about it. And there's other entries as well. One of those other being the beautiful, amazing Vanguard magnetic RPG privacy screen. If you go follow Legendcraft's up and coming project on Facebook, that is also another entry. So we're really excited about this contest, and I really want to get this beautiful Blackwater embossed rolling rod into somebody's hands. It is not near me, but I will bring it out at some point on the stream. So we're really excited about this. So it could be coming your way, so make sure you enter the contest. I think that's it for sponsorships. One last thing about Prime Gaming. If you are someone who's sponsor or what you call it, sponsors us, subscribes to us, please re-up your Prime Gaming subscription. It does not roll over every month. As well, Wednesday, we are so excited to bring Behind the Screen back for its third month. The lads of Blackwater will be sitting around chatting all things DMing with our amazing guest this month, Kyle Gould from Tavern Tales. You might have seen him around in the chat. He hosts two amazing podcasts. One's called Tavern Tales and Tavern Tales Junior, which he plays D&D 5th edition, like full 5th edition, with a group of kids. And it is so wonderful. I've listened to a bunch of their episodes and I love them to bits. So we're really excited to host him. And I think that's it. I think that's all the announcements I have. Yeah.
Let's talk about Dungeon Master.
Dungeon Masters. Something I was going to say.
So you're telling me, that there's different types of Dungeon Masters? That's crazy.
That's crazy.
I don't believe it.
You don't
I don't
believe
believe that at all.
Well, get ready to learn things, guys.
Academic study or research to back it up?
You know I do. I'm not going to make you read the journal articles that I did for this, but there is some amazing organizations out there, primarily in the States, who do research on RPG gaming and do like teach folks how to DM. RPG Therapeutics is a big one in the States. Game to Grow is another one out of the States. I love Game to Grow and everything they do.
Big fan.
And there's also like a lot of really well-respected GMs and DMs out there who talk about this kind of stuff in like forums and have big, long, beautiful, wonderful discussions about it, write articles about it, blog posts. So I've spent the last 3 or 4 weeks perusing all of that and have summed it all up here for you. But the one thing I was going to say before we jumped into the intro was that I think the session that we just had previously is going to be really interesting when we think about it in the context of GM style and archetype, because there's a lot of instances in which different GM styles or GM archetypes would have really shaped or changed that situation, or really would have interacted with that situation very differently. And I will never speak for Tim as to what he kind of feels his style is. I have some thoughts about what I think his style is, but it is like and this is also not to say that like any particular GMing style is bad. It just might not be the right fit for you.
That is 100% true. And like harkening back to our player archetypes, which really educated to me, it's like, oh yeah, like probably most people's like bad experience with D&D is bad, like, or not necessarily bad, but like not cohesive player party makeup. And that also might be true of like party to DM makeup. Like there's no wrong way to play D&D. There's just maybe some people that you
shouldn't sit at the same table together.
Shouldn't sit at the same table together.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too for myself as a therapist. I think that that's been well outed. So I am a therapist. So something that we talk about when we think about relationships, like if I have a couple sitting in front of me and I'm doing couples therapy with them, we think about three things, and I use the triangle as a way to think about it. You have person A, person B, and the relationship. The relationship itself is a very different thing that is interacting in the couple dynamic. And if we think about that in the context of D&D, you have the players, the DM, and the table. So each of those have interactions on each other. So we're just going to talk about the DMs this evening, but inherently we end up talking about the other. It's like when the narratives and mechanics kiss. It's great. It's wonderful. I just want those stickers in my life.
I want that t-shirt. I want that tattoo. Just each hand on either peck.
Just kissing.
Giving each other little pecks. And then when I flex.
I was going to say. Perfect. Pecs. That's great. Okay. So I've split this week's topic up into a couple different things. We're going to talk GM styles. We're going to talk GM archetypes, and we're going to talk GM mindset. So those are kind of the three things that we're going to start with this evening. GM styles is there's only like two prominent ones, and then archetypes, there's a bunch of them.
I just want to quickly,
go ahead, Yanis.
For those who only know D&D like I did for a long time, GM is a term that's used for other role-playing games that's not D&D specific. I know might for some people seem like a silly thing to add, but it's literally something that confused the heck out of me when I first got into it, where I was like, sometimes they say GM, sometimes they say DM.
Yes.
DM is the official.
General Motors.
It's not General Motors. I mean,
Game Master.
It is also General Motors, but DM is Dungeons and Dragons specific. Game Master is sort of every other tabletop RPG. And Master of Ceremonies, some people use.
Different things will use different terms for their GM, but you could say GM for pretty much any game,
the blanket
for the story facilitator.
Like I know Call of Cthulhu, I believe, is the keeper. Like Bluebeard's Bride, which is a game that I love to the end of the earth and back, is the groundskeeper is the name of the another one is oh gosh, I was literally just thinking of another one. Anyway, like there are different names for them for sure. So I'll probably use GM
and DM probably interchangeably.
But I'll likely talk about GMs more prominently, but we're going to talk about it generally in the context of.
I just wanted to clarify that for those who might not be.
Thank you, Yanis.
Thank you, Yanis. So we're going to talk GM styles first. And if any of you are familiar with kind of anything to do with Game of Thrones, you will likely have heard these two connotations or these two styles talked about before. They're quite prominent in like literary settings or literary fantasy writing or any type of like big narrative arc writing. But these also really, really come from GMing and like game mastering and stuff like that. So this is pantsers versus plotters. So I'll talk about pantsers first. I'll give some pros and cons, and then I'll talk about plotters as well. So pantsers, as their name suggests, tend to fly by the seat of their pants. They create characters and conflict, but do not have an end point in mind. Some even folks who have improv have a lot of sense of where they're going. Pantsers often like have characters show up to a situation and just see what they do. There is no necessary, so it's like I even think of like the last session that we very much had, that was we got pantsed in that situation. That is just like, here is
we pantsed ourselves.
We did pants ourselves.
We
truly.
Put that dude in the thing and we busted him out, and we were left holding
absolutely
the bag.
Absolutely. We could have just killed the body, and that would have been it,
and had a haunted jar
with a soul in it. like that would have been it. We could have, like, 100 feet away, if we'd have killed the body 100 feet away from it, soul would have been gone, and that would have been it. And there would have been, I mean, there might have still been a moral dilemma, but like we created that moral dilemma for ourselves. So the pros of pantsing, it leaves a ton of room for characters and character development, whether that's PCs or NPCs. The story tends to feel more real and organic rather than characters and NPCs simply being like plot devices for a larger narrative. Dialogue matters. Exchanges between characters have more weight and carry more gravitas throughout the campaign. It's like there's ripple effects from when you put characters in situations, something happens, and going forward. I think of, from a personal example, where I was pantsed was the Matron of Vengeance situation. Like my hand wasn't forced to say yes, but it was like the matron wanted all of us to take it or none, or we couldn't do it. So like Neppy could have said no, but there was I wasn't directed one way or the other. I was just given the option. I was pantsed in that situation. We were pantsed with the moral dilemma. The cons of pantsing: it takes a monumental amount of work to prepare and run a session, and it requires big world building energy because the world has to move on without the characters. If the characters, like, I think, for example, another really good instance of pantsing is in the latest Critical Role season. Spoilers, cover your ears if you haven't heard about it. But they go out to sea for a while and kind of follow that arc. But the world and the war that is occurring between the Dwendalian Empire and Jorhas carries on. Like that war completely carries on, and they're out at sea doing, following kind of Ford's backstory stuff. It's okay, Sean, you can put your ears back in now. His ears are still off. You can put your ears back in now. So that's kind of
texts.
Matt pantses them a lot this season.
All the time.
It's
really cool.
It's really great because I think the differences, like, between, just to talk Critical Role quickly, between this newest season and the previous season is that, no, you don't have to. I'm not spoiling anything. Is that the previous season, he didn't really pants them that often. Like he did, but he didn't as much as he is this season. And this season, because, and we've talked about it a lot, where groups come in and they don't want to play the heroes and they sort of and they ha about things. He's sort of given them consequences to that by pantsing them. So where they're like, oh, we don't want to be the heroes, he's like, fine, shit's only going to keep getting worse until you guys step in. So he's definitely, I think it's a very creative use of that this season, where he's like, yeah, if you guys don't want to be the heroes, you're just gonna have a bigger mess to clean up when you eventually step it in.
Or if you don't step in, somebody else will, and you'll have to deal with the consequences of that.
Well, I mean, the money hole was the same for you guys, right?
We left it.
You left it, and he pantsed you.
He did. Like
the world kept going.
The money hole kept doing its thing.
Irkin kept irkining.
He did. So like that amount of world building energy is huge, because you need to know what's happening or occurring in the world as the party does whatever the party is doing. The moving parts exist with or without the players, and this may players may start to feel lost sometimes. They might feel like they don't have like one clear direction because they're not given one straight road to walk down. Campaigns can, in this essence, can kind of feel slow. Sometimes there might be a lot of stuff building, because conflict takes time to build and develop, and it may feel like a really long time without a conflict payoff. But once things tend to start getting into place, that's when the party tends to start like getting their feet under them, and then they start kind of moving down one specific arc. But when that arc is done, they're kind of, again, the world is a bit more their oyster, and they have to kind of walk into those situations and be pantsed again.
And I think a good pantsing DM learns how to put them in situations, but have a pretty high idea of what the outcome will be. So they're not like necessarily forcing their hand, but they're putting them in situations where they know the characters well enough to sort of pre-plan what they're going to do. And that allows for, like, of course, characters to throw the DM or GM for a loop, but it's still, it still allows for like the progression of a story that they can pre-plan. Otherwise you would just end up like with complete chaos.
Yeah.
I pants a great deal in my own
in just general life as well. If you're friends with Sean.
I have never like
I'm not making a reference to the pantsing. I'm just saying
to pants
a lot of
people,
times
literally. I'm bad at it. Sorry,
I'm saying
ahead.
figuratively you pants people in real life too.
How do I figuratively pants people? What is a figuratively pantsing? What does that mean?
No, I mean in real life you create situations and then see how people react.
Oh yeah, I am a source of chaos.
You literally
the Lord of Chaos, yes.
Yeah,
lord. I'm working my way up the ladder.
There are things you have to do to achieve that status.
Come on.
But even in our group chat, you'll be absent, and then when you do chime in, it usually creates some sort of turmoil because it's like you just come in and stir the pot and then leave.
It just bounces so quick.
and the thing I've never understood about it is I'm almost positive you don't go back and read the consequence of your stirring. You stir and then you bounce, and then when you come back, that was like days ago.
Yeah. Our group chat is a source of chaos.
You're a pantser in real life.
I will pants in the game, and the whole thing is whenever if I just throw something at them, and I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna turn out. If you just oh no, there's a troll, but he's also a person, but they're supposed to kill it. But it makes really salient points about why it deserves to live under this bridge. I'm always like, okay, there's the two obvious ways: they kill the troll, they do the thing, and then I always prepare the third way, which is what if they befriend the troll or something? And
yes.
Then, but in terms of pantsing, in terms of what that prep looks like without railroading, which is oh, they're gonna go there and they have to kill that troll who has a lovely British accent and collects china. You just have to be ready for when you throw something at them and you don't know what's gonna happen. You kind of have to be ready for at least a couple options of something happening.
Sean,
you got to play catch.
Yeah, you're a pantser in as a player as well. You oftentimes include people when they don't know they're going to be included, just to see what their reaction was.
I love it.
That was literally 2 sessions ago when I was like, let's just throw fucking Finn and Yana together. Let's see what that makes.
100%.
I mean, you do it to Tim too. You were like, I'm going to bring Clack in, and then you're like, okay, Jen and Tim, have fun. I'm out.
I have fun in Barnwich. You too.
Look, that's just being a good wingman. Yeah, that's not pantsing. That's being a wingman.
That's being a good gravel boy.
That's being good gravel boy.
And anytime you can pants Tim in his own campaign, bonus.
I love it. It's so good. And I think so. Something that is it also depends. The way that you're playing may also shape whether you actually have the ability to pants folks. Theater of the mind groups and quick draw map groups. Great. Super easy to pants folks because you can draw something on the fly, or kind of like what we do with Theater of the Mind, because combat in Zoom and moving minis, that's difficult. So we don't do it. But folks who build maps or online groups, when you have Roll20, that can be hard. It can be hard to have a map ready on the fly for anything. So that brings us to plotters. Plotters generally start with an outline where they want to take the story and tend to build out from there. Doesn't necessarily mean they're railroading, but they can be. Most DMs generally, based on the research that I've read, kind of looking at different styles, most DMs are plotters. Pros of being a plotter: they know where the story is going. DM knows that there's generally a climactic conclusion coming, or at least building that arc of the story, and there's a story that builds to it even if you don't know how the story is going to get there. They have this ability to mount towards rising action, which is really great. The plotters create NPCs and create situations to drive the story to the point that they have in mind. Cons: campaigns can feel a bit railroaded, and NPCs can sometimes feel like they're only there to drive the plot or to give important information, while not living lives of their own, and the story can become sometimes predictable. So not necessarily a bad thing, but can tend to feel a bit mechanic rather than more organic.
I will say railroading gets a lot of flack from people who play D&D, especially people who play a lot of D&D. It's pretty normal, I feel with new groups, to railroad a certain amount, because people forget that they have to achieve a goal, otherwise it's not really fun. But it gets a kind of a bad rep. I personally kind of am a fan of railroading. I think of a lot of my favorite D&D campaigns that I've especially the podcasts that I listen to. you take Adventure Zone, the first arc of the Adventure Zone, like if you listen to it and analyze the way that Griffin DMs, he's 100% railroading them almost all the time. And the great thing about it is they have an understanding where he's like, narratively, I'm not going to give you a lot of wiggle room, but I'm going to create spaces for you guys to goof around that don't affect the general story. Like they do, in the sense that like you can pick the name for the person and you can like do that kind of thing, but they don't affect the greater arc of the narrative that he's created. Like he knows the story he wants to tell. And I think there's something kind of cool about having that sort of like forethought to tell a beautiful story and take them along for the journey. But there needs to be a certain amount of understanding of like, we're not going to try and derail the narrative. We're going to join you on this story and enjoy being part of it. And then also have space to do our goofs and our jokes and stuff in the room created that's like a safe place. And that's a lot of times the only way that you can, I think the only way that you can tell a really great story through D&D. And I know Sean and people will disagree with me, because when you're playing it, you get really close to the story and you're like, this story's fantastic. But from the outside, it's not always that good, because like proper storytelling needs to hit certain beats to like tell a proper story. Like that's just the way stories go. So I think that's, for me, and we've talked about it before, coming from like someone who reads and loves fantasy novels, like I want my story to have like heroes, and like I want those beats to be hitting.
You want a hero's journey.
To be hit. Exactly.
We want those beats to be hitting. We all
want them to be hitting.
Absolutely. Well, I think something that's like really, I'm hearkening back to one of our very first kind of RPG theory sessions when we talked about group dynamics. In the very beginning of a group forming, the DM or GM needs to almost take on a more plotting type of style, because they need to get the party moving. They need to give the party some impetus to move forward so that they can actually get to the storming stage, which they may be a bit more free form before rejoining again to kind of go in that forming or that norming and moving towards performing stage. Like the DM almost needs to be a bit more heavy-handed in that to kind of move people through the story. To get them going and to kind of feel that out. And, a lot of, because if you give a brand new group a sandbox, it's overwhelming, because the group needs a push. So, I think you're totally right, Yanis. Railroading does get a bad rap, but I'm absolutely not against it. I think it needs to happen in some way, shape, or form. There's also parties that love it. There's also full out parties that want.
If you're running a game for kids, yes, railroad it. Like don't even try and create a sandbox, because like they just want to be like you, like the same thing. You create the little bubbles for the play, but like in a greater story arc. I think if you don't railroad with kids, like if you pantsed with kids, like that would be insane.
Depends on the kids though. Go ahead.
I'd say a good way to sort of illustrate the way these two styles like function in terms of actual like DM prep is plotting is dungeon crafting, where like you will go into this room, there's going to be this puzzle or these creatures. How you deal with that is up to you, and that's where like the character expression comes from. But you will pass on from this room and it will lead to this other room. And that will lead to, maybe there'll be branching rooms, but like when you build a good dungeon, like we've seen Tim build wonderful dungeons.
Amazing.
The dungeon is built, and you can tweak it behind the scenes a little, but the dungeon is built. Versus say, oh, we're in an urban setting, and I need you to hunt down this individual.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
Now you have a goal, and it's like, who do we talk to? I don't know. Who are you gonna talk to?
Yeah.
And like and then it's just.
I got DM anxiety just from that.
The DM's built a city. They've probably built a number of NPCs who know the thing, and like people who might know who to talk to.
And they
then
could have built in like red herrings and stuff. And they could also, and like a fully, pantsing DM at that point, say we've got this contract to go hunt this person down, bring them back to somewhere. Oh, we get diverted and we decide to go do something else and abandon this contract. Totally fine.
Totally
we go
fine.
this way and this thing moves on and goes forward. Yeah.
There are certain people that I'm friends with who DM who have asked me like, do you want to play in my group, or like I'm starting a new group, do you want to play? And I literally say no, because I know they're going to be too much pantsing, and the anxiety that I have for that is like I'm not saying I want a railroaded campaign. Like like Tim runs a beautifully like nuanced combination of the two.
Yes.
Where, like he's got his larger story arc that he will nudge you to get there. But there are some people, I mean, Sean, I know, is one of them, who runs campaigns where it's like, okay, you're here. It's the same with the campaign you were telling me about, the one your brother is running, where it's like a heavy mechanic but fully pantsed, where it's like you can do anything. Like I can't, like, that brings me like, functioning in normal life is like being pantsed constantly, and that's enough anxiety for me. Like I don't need that in my D&D as well.
Nothing gets me hotter as a DM than players deriving meaning from whatever they choose. Like,
I love
where they
being
just
pantsed.
I love
it.
When they just invest meaning in something, I'm like, oh, you just want to run for mayor in this small town in buttfuck nowhere? Yes, we're gonna spend 8 months doing this. Fucking, I love it as a DM. It's like, tell me what you want and we'll just go there.
I think about when we played Small Town Sheriff, like when we set up
we
Dresda.
barely played Small Town Sheriff. There was a lot more.
Right. But yeah, you being like, hey, we should go settle Dresda. I don't know whether Tim had kind of anticipated us doing that or not, but like ran with it and was just like, yes, what do you do when you're here? Like, how do you set this up? What do you go about doing? And then just started kind of like filling out from there. So now we have, this one, Bacall is now Dresda, and, like, it's, I think one of the greatest things that can happen in a campaign is where there's just like this mutual agreement of like a shared style. So like people, like your players pantsing your GM, the GM pantses you in return. The DM, the DM or GM plots, the players plot as well. I think that kind of mutuality can happen together.
Let's not forget that players are also capable of plotting.
Yes, like, absolutely.
Playing is generally pantsing because you're just figuring it out and you're unveiling, but like you can take like agency over where your character is going and like have a plan, like, because people have plans for where they see themselves and where they aspire to be, and being conscious about those is important, or like is a viable option, whilst also being flexible with it, where, if your character, I think Yanis, you talked about bumping up against this, your character sees themselves as an Aragon, and it turns out they're a Gimli, which is kind of better in my opinion. I'm a big
Why are you bringing us back here?
Sean cannot stop talking about it. To Gimli. All roads.
I wanted to say like two things. Firstly, you don't, I think one thing is, we talk a lot about DMs like Tim and Matt Mercer, the fact that I was like, I can't do first name, that's too weird. Matt Mercer, Mr. Mercer,
Eminem.
We talk about them as like pantsers, but they're both, and I think that's a very important thing, like, to distinction to make. Like, the great DMs are the ones who are able to weave both together. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that,
no, it's a weaving. Okay, not a kissing. It's a weaving.
This is narrative and mechanics. We can't
do the same thing.
Any two-thing kissing.
No. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Narratives and mechanics. They kiss.
Pantsing.
This is a weave.
But I gotta say, pantsing and plotting are like the narrative and mechanics of DMing. And then the other thing I wanted to say is to your point, Sean, about taking agency for your character in terms of plotting. I remember when in Arc 1 of Critical Role, there was a lot of people who were like, oh, this is scripted. Like there's like, and they made jokes about it a lot, the cast, about how silly that idea was. But I think what people, and it's the same with the Adventure Zone, people were like, oh, this is scripted. But I think what people forget is that the storytelling is very much collaborative, in the sense that they would discuss before session things their characters wanted to do with the DM. Like, not everything your character does has to be a surprise to the DM.
Yeah.
Like, I know that especially in especially in the Adventure Zone, they talk about it in a lot of the episodes they did about the first arc. The guys would speak to Griffin and be like, I'd like to do this. How does this fit in with the world? Like, how does this fit in with the narrative? Like, is this something, because sometimes people want to do things that don't make sense for the society or for the world. And I know it happens a lot with our players as well, where they'll message Tim and be like, my character's thinking of doing this. Like, is that like something that would work? Or like, can I do this? Because it's a mechanical thing that's inspired by a narrative. I think being able to like work with the DM, where you're like, this is where I see my character going, this is why I'm making those decisions, allows him to do two things. A, it allows him to give you that. It allows you to fulfill that need. Like, you want to be able to do this thing. If I don't know about it and you're just like trying to lead me there, like, it gets confusing. If you tell me that's where you want to go, we can work to build to a version of that. And then the other thing as well is he can then put you in interesting situations that challenges that thinking. So like, the whole concept of like, you got to keep your stuff secret from the DM and the DM's got to keep his stuff secret from you, I think is like complete bullshit. Like, work with your DM to tell your story. Like, be vocal about like the things you want your character to have. I mean, keep secrets if you want to make it interesting. But
well, let me just, I just had a conversation with Tim maybe 2 weeks ago where I said, Tim, I'm going to let you know something. Letters is interested in pursuing this. It may have this kind of mechanical outcome. Whether you as the DM allow that to happen in world or not, that's fine with me. Letters is still going to pursue it because he's interested in it. And so that way, I felt really good about that because it's still Tim's world. He's still, but I also then feel good about like Letters is still on the path. But like talking to Lennon, which I didn't do, where I was like, hey, I might ask you about this thing about your character, just so that you've had a chance to think about it. I didn't tell her like what context I was going to ask her. I didn't plan to have it, last session, but like letting people know, because yeah, we all love making brilliant stuff up on the fly, but if it's something really important, giving people a little bit of time to actually think about it, and like if you're just like, hey, I'm interested in going to the Isle of Glass, the Labyrinth of Glass.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even need to say why or anything. That would just let Tim build an area of the Labyrinth of Glass to go to, rather than like him, like if we're just like start of next session, we're teleporting to the Labyrinth of Glass, he would just be like, okay. And it would probably be like, not one of our best sessions, because he would just be really, probably he might be prepped for it, but maybe, you know what I mean? Like, someone else take the reins. I ran out of steam.
It's like improv though. Like, I don't know if this is a spoiler for people, but like, people who do improv generally practice doing improv with one another, and they know how each other's brains work, and they know the connections that they're going to make. And like, there's a certain amount of like, they're playing the same sport, if that analogy makes any sense. They're not like on a football field and then they're throwing a tennis ball. Like, they're playing the same sport. They have an idea of where things are going to go. They know the people, they know the kind of things that they joke about. They know the routes that they take. Their brains work in the same direction. And it's the same for a DM, like a D&D group. You want to be going in the same direction. It's a collaborative storytelling thing. So share.
Absolutely. And
not to you go Em.
So like when it comes to like the difference between pantsing and plotting, I think, we hit it on the head a little bit before, but like marry both, and like pick and choose situationally what techniques you're going to use to like bring that out of your character, react, or bring it out of your players, react to your players, allow yourself to be surprised, and allow yourself to be flexible, focus on like hone in on conflict, whether that's like emotional conflict or, physical conflict, like build, like leave space for that kind of both of those things and not just push people one way or the other. Let go of direction, because sometimes your players will want to take things in a different direction that you may not want to, but you need to also sometimes give them direction if they ever end up getting lost. Create a living world that lets dialogue matter, while a potential story arc plays on around them. Like, key events may occur whether or not the PCs are there or not. They might hear that this very important thing is happening in town A, but they may just be like, oh, we're gallivanting through town C, D, E, and F right now. So, stuff that's happening in town A goes on without them. So marrying both and balancing what needs to happen situationally is often a really good, style to adopt. Don't be too anchored to one or the other. So if we're moving on, and we're going to talk about GM archetypes. Archetypes are a little bit different than styles. Like, these would be more, styles are kind of more, I would say, how they interact with like the players more so, and kind of like on a bigger level. Archetypes would be kind of like how they often talks about planning, talks about world building, talks about the NPCs that they create and stuff like that. So the first archetype, these are a bit different than the player archetypes, but they kind of have some parallel to them. So one of the first ones we'll talk about is writers. So writers are prepared, and they have a story to tell. True writers have everything planned in great detail. Villains all have backstories. NPCs have really unique details. Shops are populated with inventories. They're handcrafted campaigns with unique and rich characters who have fully interesting lives going on around them. At best, writers have a really rich knowledge of the world and the histories of the world. They've taken the time to develop interesting plot hooks. Campaigns grow with the characters, taking shape based on how the players interact with the world, because the content of material that the players give a writer, adds to their wealth of knowledge about the world itself. It discourages metagaming because players tend to have to adapt to homebrewed encounters and scenarios. At its not greatest, or at worst, these writers can railroad players to keep them on track. More often than not, they may create arbitrary barriers to keep the story they've written going, and they can refuse to budge if something threatens the world that they've built, and the uniqueness of settings may feel kind of contrived and cliched. So that's a writer. There's a lot of go ahead, Sean.
Just one thing you mentioned there is you can't metagame because it's all homebrew. Basically everything we're talking about is homebrew DMs. We haven't even acknowledged that modulars DMing is a thing.
Yes.
Because module DMing is literally all plotting.
Yes.
That I guess you'd that by design, that's the whole thing. It's you buy this and we've got the whole thing set up for you. That also exists. I just want to say that it does.
Absolutely.
If you're I want a DM, but I am intimidated by the amount of work. I don't want to do the work. I don't have the space in my life to do work. Fucking Wizards of the Coast got your back.
So, and at all different levels of DMing, and for all different levels of players too. Like, if you're starting off with a group of brand new players and you're a brand new DM yourself, you might not want to take on something like Storm King's Thunder or
Tomb of Annihilation.
Or Curse of Strahd. You might want to start off with something a bit more simple, like the Lost Mines of Fendelver, or just
honestly, the fucking starter box that you can get, where it's
so
this is all you need for DM. I've fucking opened that bad boy up. Ooh, boy, would I recommend that for people who are just starting.
So nice. And I think that there is a lot to be said about modular gaming, RPG.
That exists. We talk about homebrew.
We talk generally about homebrew.
It's the only kind of DMing I do. I don't have time to be building whole worlds and mechanics and peoples and no, modulars where I feel comfortable.
Modules are great.
And you still have all those great moments because you still have the characters. You still have people playing characters in those settings. That doesn't change. It's just, I find that homebrew is more interesting for people who've played Dungeons and Dragons a lot. If you're new, you're not going to really know the difference between homebrew and not homebrew because you won't be familiar with any of the NPCs or stories or anything. Once you've played for a while, you get to know everything, and then homebrew is this sort of what keeps it interesting.
And I think that there is a lot of space to I'm never ever going to you know, rail on modular gaming, because if you think of like even session stuff like around like the cities of the Forgotten Realms, or stuff like Waterdeep, like you could set an entire campaign in Waterdeep that is homebrewed using a Waterdeep setting and using plot hooks that are developed even through a Wizard of the Coast book, like stuff like Eberron, which allows you, like, campaign settings are a wonderful way that if you want to tell, like if you are a DM who's like, I have an idea for some story arcs and stuff like that, but you'd like a world to have it set in. I even think of like the Critical Role, like the Taldore campaign setting or the Wildmount campaign setting that allows you to tell your story with little beautiful, plot hooks that you could go explore, but in a world that's already fleshed out, that you don't have to go about creating a whole bunch of stuff.
Or even one step further, if you are doing a homebrew, but say are kind of weak on puzzles because you don't have a good brain, or like
puzzles, yeah.
Yeah, 4 puzzles. I was taking shit at myself, not implying that anyone who can't do puzzles. I wasn't trying to flex at how good I was at puzzles. I'm bad at making puzzles and riddles. Or like just encounters are not your strong suit. You're more into character. Then like fucking open up a module and just like, oh, that's a fun combat encounter.
Yeah.
Like I'll just reskin that, which is, you use the stats of everything, but just describe them as whatever's appropriate for your thing. So there's
Absolutely.
a great deal of mileage you can get out of modules that aren't even just the modules themselves.
For sure. And I even think of someone who's like a fantastic and amazingly homebrewed GM, someone like Mark Humes, who is the GM for High Rollers. He's currently DMing a Curse of Strahd campaign for his players right now. They're running their entirely homebrewed world campaign, and then also a Curse of Strahd campaign that he has taken, is running the module, but also has like homebrew all over the place, because that's what he does. He's taken the world of Barovia, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to mess with it all over the place. So that can be something that you do too if you're wanting to try and flex those homebrew skills, but you want the overall story arc, you can even do that as well.
Let's bring it back. I want to hear the next DM archetype.
So these are wargamers. So these folks prefer running combat to narrative. Combat is elaborate and complex. They know rules and abilities to a T. So at best, these folks run amazing combat with potential for decent story as a backdrop. The combat is always challenging, but likely exceedingly fair. They'll have answers for all of your in-combat questions. Dice rolling will be honest and the encounters are like thoughtfully prepared. There's a lot of, they might be new and exciting for the players who are in them, because wargamers do like to challenge their players. At worst, the wargamers can prepare campaigns with little or no storyline or justification for adventure. They can put players at severe disadvantage and then pride themselves on the poor outcome of their players because of the combat. Campaigns feel like a series of door kick-ins. Which is fine for a group that wants to just kick in the door all the time. Great, go kick in the door all the time. Have like an ongoing, sprawling, true dungeon delve. That's great. It's not for everybody, though. I know for me, like I wouldn't thrive in a campaign like this. I need narrative juicy bits. That's the kind of stuff that gets my motor running with D&D. I love combat, but I think I'm more of a narrative directed person myself.
I get pretty stoked anytime there's something in the environment that I can fuck with.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
If a DM throws a conveyor belt into the map, I lose my shit. If there's a chandelier, I go hard. Let's not even get started on pits. Oh boy.
You got to wear your Get in the Pit shirt one night.
I don't think you've worn it yet. Look, all right, just talking directly to Tim, more pits, because fucking... Letters hasn't pushed anyone into, except for that little like shallow basin of water. Like since we started streaming, Letters haven't put nobody in a pit, and not for lack of trying. Like there's just not enough pits. There's that one big one, but then the big monster was too big to go in the big pit. You gave me a big monster in a big pit, and I couldn't push it in.
There's a spell in the there's Tim sometimes this is awesome spell book that Tim sometimes gives us spells from. There's a spell just called Pit. And you just get to create a pit, and I desperately need you to have that spell. Also a portable hole,
which is an item that you can just throw, and it's like a Looney Tunes thing. It's only 10 feet deep, but that's good enough.
That's a pit also.
Next, need more pits.
More pits. That's our main note for Tim this evening.
Pits, chandeliers,
Conveyor belts. Right. So abstractors are the next one that we'll talk about. They are flexible GMs, but they can often be kind of vague about what's happening, and they don't like to be locked in by rigid descriptions of anything. And at best, these folks tend to respond to situations on the fly. They're really good at giving you a general overview of what is happening. They have clear images of what's going on, but they can use vagueness to adapt to player expectations and let the players kind of run with it that way. They can come up with rules on the fly for when a player wants to do something off book, and they're not bound to the battle mat. So they tend to be quite flexible, a bit more so than writers or war gamers. At worst, abstractors may fall into a category of folks who don't plan anything or enough ahead of time, and they're convinced that they'll figure it out when it becomes important. So that's often can be quite a big pitfall for folks, is feeling like they have that they're like, oh, I've planned enough and I'll just figure it out when it happens, which can be really hard when your players throw wrenches at you or throw something at you that you weren't expecting, and then you're fumbling. Your flexibility has left you fumbling, so that can be hard as well. Next, moving on, sandboxers. So these folks let the players completely guide the story. They may give some plot hooks, but it is fully okay for the players to freely ignore them. They want players to do their own things in the world. At best, they give the players an amazing amount of freedom, and they adapt to what the players decide to do effectively. The world is built enough to support choices with logical responses. Events are thrown in to engage players, and story is built around actions and interactions. And this gets a really, really organic and real kind of feeling to the game, that you could literally be a person in this world and go anywhere and do anything. At worst, the sandboxers can tend to wait for players to give them a story. So there won't be any hooks because they're waiting for the players to do something that hooks them. Events feel haphazard, and stories can often feel anticlimactic, because generally when folks play D&D, they want some sort of journey. Doesn't necessarily have to be a hero's journey, but they're often looking for a story. And in sandboxing, there may not be one, or may not be one apparent right away. So that can be one that can often leave players feel, games can often lack confidence, coherence, and continuity. So things tend to feel just like blips that happen that don't actually interact with each other. They can feel quite siloed. And then it's funny, we were talking about modules. One of the last archetypes that were like kind of the more big ones that they talk about in the literature is modulars. So people who run modules exclusively. And that is the only kind of DMing that they do. And this is not to say that these archetypes exist like you are this but not this. You could be like bits of both. But modulars tend to rely on adventure paths and pre-written adventures, which is definitely not a bad thing. And at best, they have a really, really deep understanding of the adventure that they're running. They know how to adapt when their players inevitably go off the rails or decide to do something in the game that isn't in the book. They understand the plot and can tie like multiple bits together for a cohesive campaign, or even tie multiple modules together for a cohesive campaign, because some modules go from like level 1 to level 10 or 11, and then other modules can start from higher. They could tie 2 modules together and make a really beautiful campaign. And they can add their own flavor to a predetermined plot. They know the lore. Players who know the lore of the world get to contribute a bit more, and it's a consistent, reliable GM who can breathe life into words on the page, which is really rad. I've never played a module before. I don't know if either of you have played a module.
That's how we started playing. We started playing Tomb of Annihilation, which is a really interesting module in that the first part is like, you need to get to this place, and it feels very sandboxy.
Cool.
And Adam was our DM. Well, no, it started as Trey, who's an individual we've never mentioned before.
Oh, bless Trey. We love Trey.
Bless Trey. And so it felt very pantsy. And then you land at said tomb, which is very dungeony. And it feels like very locked in. And our party was like, we can't do this. And so Adam threw a genie at us and let us leave. But we're like, we can't leave because we're too invested.
Yes.
Like, our characters are invested in the outcome here. But like, us as players are not smart enough to do these puzzles. And like, we need to take a long rest after every thing because we're getting
Wrecked.
deaded.
Oh,
Like,
no.
But that's because we were too good at the getting there part, so we got there like way too early, like level wise. But it was interesting because Adam built a really interesting homebrew campaign that was essentially modular. So basically what happened was we ended up on this ship that could plane shift, and whatever plane we shifted to, we played a version of an existing module. So we shifted to a plane where we played like a Curse of Strahd module.
Cool.
And then we shifted again. So it was kind of cool. He used these sort of like existing modules and we sort of shifted between them, which was like his way of combining both homebrew and modular gaming, which I thought was really cool.
That is really cool. Yeah, I've never played a module. Would love to. At some point. I know Tim and I have chatted about like, Tim's never run a module because everything that he's done has been homebrew from the start. Hi, sweetheart. But I mean, but like for me when I run games, I feel like I would really thrive in a moduled environment. I love having a direction. I love knowing where things are going and love the ability to potentially weave homebrew throughout that. I think that's why I love one-page RPGs so much, because I love the like very predetermined structure for kind of what happens. Like one of my favorite one-page RPGs is called The Witch is Dead. It's by Grant Howitt, and it's just my favorite. And it's very much like, this is what happens. You've got a bunch of familiars. They've got to go, the witch that is their kind of keeper died. They've got to go hunt down the witch hunter, and stuff happens in between. So it allows for like so much fun and play in the middle, but very much it's kind of a module in little unto itself, which I really, really like. So modulars at worst rely on the books so much that there's no adaptation. They don't know the books on the world, but so they rely on the pre-printed knowledge. They don't actually take the time to like do the pre-reading and pre-preparation. They're just like, I'm just going to read this when that happens. And they may resort to railroading the party if it goes off script, or they don't if the GM themselves doesn't know how to react to situations. So there's a couple other like little kind of like half not as well developed archetypes or not well seen archetypes. The Monty Halls, which are named after a game show host who was named Monty Hall, Hall, and this is Monty Hall, Haul. So they give out lots of loot and boons and abilities all the time, all over the place. And the pros of our GM archetypes or GMs who do this, players are often like super kitted out and love playing with their shiny toys. But cons, players can become super overpowered very, very quickly and then lose interest when there's no shiny things involved. And I know Tim Carlson. Tim Carlson is the first person to say he loves a magic item. He said it on our show when he was on here. I love how much stuff Tim gives out and is just like, yeah, have fun, play with it. It's great. But is like, he seems to be a bit more like reasoned with the leveling and of items and stuff like that. Another one is a killer. So this kind of harkens back to the player style, who is also a killer, who kind of believes that their job as the GM or DM is adversarial, ready to mess you up. Like they're ready to kind of gun for your character. They're often really great at technical or mechanical challenges. They create really, really unyielding scenarios to challenge even the most experienced players. If the players want to kill stuff and feel smart for avoiding traps and enact like death-defying stunts, this is the type of DM that you want around, because this DM will help create situations for that. But the cons of this is like the players and the GM have to be on the same wavelength. Like a killer GM needs a table full of killers. Like they need to have that nice fit, because things can go terribly, terribly wrong based on one roll of the dice, and the players have to be okay with that. If that's the kind of table that the GMs are setting, it can make, if the players aren't okay with that, it can make things really adversarial between both folks. The players feel quite horrible. Like it almost feels like the GM is gunning for a TPK. If the players aren't min-maxed in the right way. It's like one of the quotes that I read was, it's like a railroad GM where the only destination is a frustrating, inexplicable death, which I thought was great. And like, if that's the kind of player you are, awesome. You found the right table in this GM. And sometimes really like railroady GMs can stray into a killer, to a kind of a killer archetype if the players go too far, of course. They're gonna be like, well, I'm gonna kill your character then. And maybe this is just me. I'm a part of a lot of like D&D forums on like Facebook, and I follow stuff on Reddit. I don't understand the mindset of like gunning to kill a player, like gunning to kill a PC.
If you survive, the thrill is unbelievable. Imagine thumbing your nose at God.
I mean, I guess.
I feel like Sean understands.
Look, it's just like when you're talking about like feeling clever, like feeling really having earned it.
Yeah.
If you know, like behind the DM screen, there's a little table in the DM's guide, which is like, this is the various levels of danger for your parties at a certain level. And it goes from like easy, hard, easy, medium, hard, and then deadly.
Yeah.
And like, if you're throwing a deadly encounter at your party, like the way Wizards of the Coast has pitched it, then it is realistic that one of the party members, if not more, could die in this encounter. And if you just understand that like that is the world you're going into, then you're probably playing the wrong role playing. You might want to try Riddle of Steel, which is like like real fucking nuts and bolts, like swords and shields. Like, oh no, I'm infected. I'm not worried about getting cut in the arm. Like, what do I do about this?
What do I do about my gangrene? Yeah.
But like, if that's the world that you set up, and like knowing that it's adversarial, and like that is the high you're fucking charging at. It's
cool.
like, am I gonna make it out of this one? Probably not. But if I do, like, you're fucking, nothing makes you feel like Conan the Barbarian more than fucking like taking on something that you shouldn't and somehow surviving
an ultimately deadly encounter. Yeah. I think I mean, that makes complete and utter sense to me. Like when you said thumbing your nose at God, I was like, oh yeah, that makes utter sense to me. I think something that like always kind of sticks with me though is when I see those posts that are like, oh, I killed this player and this player's upset with me. What do I do about it? And part of me is just like, if you're gunning to kill all your players and are then upset with that your players are upset with you that you've done that, like, I mean, maybe that's a conversation that should be happening about communication and expectations for the table, but I don't know. Maybe that's,
I mean, let's not forget that there are a lot of very young people who play D&D and who may not have the best experience. And like,
this is very true.
Specifically, there is an archetype of young men taking out their frustration at the world, at the unfortunate people who play in their parties.
Oh,
and
yes.
So them killing players is less about them like doing D&D and more about them and their fucking boss that they hate, who like fucking, you know, whatever the fuck. Like, it's a lot of pent up frustration.
Pent-up frustration and toxic masculinity. I got
controlling something when you don't have a lot of control.
Fair enough. I understand that. So those are kind of some more archetypes that are out there. And of course, these are not like, you know, once you're one of these, you're none of the others. Sometimes, you know, GMs will move through different archetypes. They'll take on multiple different archetypes in over a campaign based on what's going on for them or stuff that they're learning and things like that. So something that I found, this was just the most recent stuff that I found, kind of the newest research I found, was talking about GM mindset. So thinking about, you know, how they look at the game overall, an overarching way that they interact in an RPG space, like with the game as a kind of a concept with RPGs, and which was based off of a standard alignment table, which I kind of like. And I think alignment is so fascinating to me. And I know a lot of people don't use it and think that it's only guidelines. Alignment is fascinating to me. So we'll talk first about the lawful GMs. Lawful good GMs kind of abide by the ethos of the game is only fun if we're all going to play fair. So these GMs like a nice balanced game in the hopes that everyone gets as much enjoyment out of it as possible. They might choose to have their players use a fixed set of numbers, like a point buy, rather than rolling to create a random set of values for their stats. They're unlikely to bend the rules so much for fear of like causing big difficulties later in the campaign. Without the element of inequality, however, because sometimes inequality happens in games and not everything is fair to all players in games, it may remove an element of competition between the players, which can often make for a more entertaining game. And strict adherence to rules can allow for fewer surprises. And people love being surprised generally in games. Some people do. So those are lawful good GMs. Lawful neutral is the adage of you can't afford food, so you'll need to roll to avoid starvation. And these GMs who do this kind of stuff, players will need to keep tabs on their money and their equipment. They need to.
How many arrows are in your quiver?
Yeah,
How
exactly.
many arrows have you fired? Do you have rope on you?
How many feet of rope do you have? How many bullets have you fired? Do you need to make more shots for that?
Look, there's nothing wrong with it. I just can't keep track of arrows, but
some GMs do, and I think
it's
fantastic.
What's your carrying capacity?
Yes, it's a perfect example.
Oh
a perfect example. So they'll carefully monitor the money the characters should be spending for those long weeks in town. They'll make sure you're deducting all of the money for every meal, every night you stay, all of that kind of stuff. They tend to be sticklers for what is and what is not said at the table. So if you're not expressively sheathing your sword before you're walking up to a group of guards, you best believe you're approaching that set of guards with your weapon drawn. So
you're triggering Sean.
I know.
Look,
I know. I'm seeing a lot of reactions.
Valid way to play, and like once you get in the groove of it. But boy, you gotta, like, if you want to play a wild adventurer and an accountant at the same time, like, this is the guy for you.
This is the guy for you. It fosters really good bookkeeping and can make players more precise about what they do. Like, it can actually foster a lot of role play in game because the players actually do need to keep aware of, like, what is my character's body doing? Like, how do I approach this person? But players can become really, really paranoid in the world, and it often leads to like a state of like nobody's willing to move because they're afraid before everything is perfectly precise, which can make the game drag a bit.
I will say what these DMs are really good for is any elements of survival.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, we're going through the woods. I hope you're ready.
Best have your tent, best have your rations, best have your bedroll.
Like what I find these DMs are really good for getting from point A to point B is like, that is an adventure in and of itself.
Yeah.
And like, that is a really cool thing. Cause a lot of times with D&D, it's like, and we travel and we're there. Cool. And like, that's fine. Cause I love the, and we got there. Like, let's just move to the next story beat. But when you really slow down, it's like, oh man, the wilderness is wild and dangerous and like granular and like mundane and shitty. Like, it can be very satisfying.
I'm thinking of
don't play a ranged character.
I'm thinking of playing like when you play, I haven't played Fallout, but I've watched enough Fallout to be like, oh yeah, these are the folks who put it on like survivalist mode where you're having to like be really aware of your radiation and all of your food and how many bottle caps do you have and like all of this kind of stuff, like being very precise about your equipment for those very long travels. So those are lawful neutral GMs. Lawful evil GMs will say, hey, it's in the rules. And the monster manuals are essentially an arsenal to a lawful evil DM. They're in the rules as are rules for character death and entirely usable depending on what the DM chooses. A lawful evil DM plays like Tomb of Horrors for fun and throws around elder gods like toys. They're in the rule book, so they're there to throw at the players. The game will be fair, but just don't get overly attached to your characters. So if a DM has a reputation for playing hardball and being very hardline about stuff, Sean, your face is like
I have nothing to say about these fucking guys. These DMs.
I think this part of the episode is worth it just for your facial reactions. This is so Amazing. So yeah, the game will be played fair. Don't get attached to your characters. DM has a reputation for hardball. They fall into this category. Players, they tend to, if a lawful evil DM is also a player, they tend to fall into like a power gamer crossed with a rules lawyer. They just like tend to have that kind of smush together, and it's can be. But as a DM, can offer some like peerless challenge, like really, really challenging situations that are completely by the book, but will leave you with some good stories about it. There is a DM for every table and a table for every player. You know what I mean? Like, not for me, but some people like that stuff. Okay, so we'll fall into the neutral category. Neutral good. This is a DM who's just like, hey, really great job. Have some items. So gaming with a neutral good DM, always
Can we
fun.
get that on a t-shirt?
Hey, great job. Have some items.
Have some items.
They're always happy to put whatever scheme the players cook up into the hands of the dice. They'll make the player, they'll be like, yeah, sure, if you roll for it. Success will always be memorable. Failure rarely results in death. Neutral good DMs are often willing to stretch the boundaries of what the system is capable of, but will rarely go entirely off book. They'll reskin, they'll modify monsters. They have like super epic scale fight scenes with really good rewards at the end, and the rewards will be really conceptual and tailored to their players, because at the end of the day, they just want to be like, hey, it'll be hard, but you're going to get some good shit at the end, which is a neutral good. Okay, true neutral GMs will basically say, you can't just have it, but I'll let you roll for it. So true neutral is really hard to balance, and it's not perfection, and everyone's technique is personal. But a neutral DM finds a path between permissive, strict, and threatening, and reward that appeals to everyone. The more generalized approach draw tips and tricks from a lot of like practice and playing over like long histories of gaming with multiple systems. These GMs are like really familiar with how the rules work, and are willing to let their players test that with consequences, of course, when things go inevitably wrong. Neutral approach can sometimes be kind of generic, though, and they may fall back on like, hey, that's what the roll did, and that can be often frustrating when the players want a little bit more personal brought into it. But most DMs kind of fall into a neutral category in some way, shape, or form. Now, neutral evil folks. This is the I hope everyone brought spare characters kind of DM. And the greatest tool in the hands of a neutral evil DM is fear. Death of a character looms like the sword of Damocles. It may never fall, but it could. And that's what these DMs really kind of revel in. Every door must be tested repeatedly, every corridor scoured, every preconception of what's going on here kind of forgotten. No NPC is to be trusted, because the moment you feel safe is when the neutral DM like aims for your jugular. Fear is the constant companion. Neutral evil DMs, though, play campaigns of intrigue and horror exceedingly well.
Yeah,
These DMs do Call of Cthulhu and like Curse of Strahd so fucking well. Or like a game like Bluebeard's Bride, they will gun for you, but it's art at that point, and are often better suited for games that have sanity mechanics in them, like, which is why Call of Cthulhu is the game for a neutral evil GM. Like, I personally love Call of Cthulhu. It's a wonderful game. I love games that have like a really good like evil twist to them. Bluebeard's Bride being probably one of my favorite RPGs out there, or another really horror game that I love called 10 Candles, that I really, really want to play with you folks and run for you. But sanity mechanics, I think, are one of my favorite things in games.
I mean, this is something that, like, as soon as you introduce this thing, I'm like, oh yeah, these people are unforgivable, because I'm thinking of them in the context of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
And so another thing to talk about is like, it's not just player makeup and like your DM style, but also, are you playing the right RPG game system?
Yes,
like
huge.
Because yeah, a fucking neutral fucking dude who throws person who throws traps that are just, if you throw a deadly trap at players and haven't warned them at all, where it's like, oh, you didn't have a high enough investigation roll, now your character's dead, that is unforgivable in D&D. That is just a dick move, full up. But if you're playing a game like Call of Cthulhu or whatever else, where that is just the world that you are walking into, then of course it's fine.
Yes.
So yeah, consider that if your DM style, you're like, oh, I'm bumping up against a lot of like, there's a lot of storming in my D&D party. Have you tried not playing D&D? Like, have you
Maybe
tried
try a different
anything
system.
else?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like wanting to play Drake's Fortune, but you put Mist in instead, and you're like, I don't understand why there's nothing but puzzles.
Mist was one of my favorite games as
So
a kid.
good.
I loved that game, and Riven and all of the series
Did
after
you-
that. I could talk for hours.
Did you ever play Phantasmagoria?
No.
It's like an old school, like really old school horror, like Mist though. You had to like, it was basically like kind of, it was kind of like you were this person who was in this haunted house, and your boyfriend or husband became haunted, and you had to figure out like who was murdering people. And but it was like Mist. You had to like carry this item with you because later you had to give it to this person, otherwise he'd kill you. And like it was like, yeah, it was
stuff.
awesome.
I love that. This is wild for me because I hate horror movies. Like a jump scare will get me every time. There's been a couple video games that I know Tim has played that I have like sit tangentially to in the living room that I'm like, I can't be in the room when you play these games. Like I just can't. But like RPG games, I love horror RPG games. They're just a delight to me. I don't know why, but they're great. And like, I like to touch on the dark and squishy stuff. It's great. So neutral evil GMs also tend towards like a creative kind of cruelty in their games. That if you love that, this is the right game and right DM for you. So perhaps, again, as Sean was saying, consider the game you're playing. Okay, now we move finally into like the chaotic realm of things, where chaotic good DMs are just basically like, let's try something new. We're just gonna try this and see how it goes. And they like to experiment and toy with the gaming system that they're playing, perhaps even going so far as to create their own. If they don't like a mechanic for something, or just like, nah, screw whatever the books say, I'm gonna try this thing. They'll go off the books altogether, or they might throw in unrelated games like chess or poker to change the game in the middle of an RPG system that they're already playing. And so long as everyone enjoying themselves and the story is good, rules often take a backseat for a chaotic good GM. These are like the ultimate rule of cool GMs, that these are going to be like, yeah, that's cool. Fantastic. That's great. Fuck what the mechanics say. Let's do what you just did.
This is another perfect example of, if you are a truly chaotic good DM, maybe Dungeons and Dragons isn't for you, because there's so many rules. Like let's just fucking go wild.
Yeah.
Like
even something as simple as adopting a like powered by the apocalypse system, where it's just like a 2d6 or something along those lines, like very light dice rolling. I think of like, though not like create your own RPG that you're like, oh, let's take bits and bits of this and I'm gonna just fucking create something because I don't want to play anything else. That's great. Do that. Chaotic good DM's freeform style might not be everyone's taste. And if an experiment that they kind of start fails, it can make for a really leave a bad taste in people's mouths, especially if that keeps happening. And it may be necessary sometimes to like go back to the basics and instill a little bit more mechanics in, because sometimes players like mechanics. They like the rules and structure that they can fall back on. So if you abandon them entirely, your players can feel kind of lost. But some players love that. Okay. Chaotic neutral DMs or GMs, that adage of like, sure, you'd do that, but would your character? So these are the GMs where role play is the foremost element for a chaotic neutral GM, and they prefer a system that offers some rule support for it, or just really focuses heavily on role play during gaming. These are like the really role play first GMs. And like weeks may go by without a rule book being touched, actual combat or being placed, but the story tends to drive like almost recklessly forward. Like it just goes forward, maybe without any dice rolls at all. Players can tend to feel swept up in the momentum of a story, but are really likely to have a memorable experience with it without actually rolling any dice at all or having to use any mechanics of it. Many systems, like, and we're talking kind of these these like alignment types often speak more broadly to GMs as a whole, not necessarily about Dungeons and Dragons. So like a lot of systems rely on combat or mechanics and focus on heavy support for managing it. So players may feel like with a chaotic neutral GM, that there aspects of their character that make them special might actually go unused if they are more mechanical aspects, especially those who are designed to be heavily combatant. They may have issue with chaotic neutral GMs who are like, yeah, rules, mechanics, but let's talk about some role play. So finding a table that is more role play forward with like less dice is probably the right one for you. And then finally, we get to chaotic evil GMs. So this is the who's ready to die kind of GM. So this is, like the adage goes that it's your DM or your GM is not supposed to be your enemy. Chaotic evil GMs really don't give a shit about that. No challenge will be impossible, of course, because otherwise where's the fun? But instant and permanent death is a constant threat. Mutilation is a very real possibility, and a day without severe blood loss is a miracle. This is the DM who runs like Tomb of Horror for fun. Regardless of whether their players want that or not.
But like Tomb of Horror, like I've been down there, it's not chaotic.
Right.
Like I don't understand how you could be chaotic evil as a DM, because like all the role play and like let's just make up things. But if all you want to do is fuck people up and there's no rules to back it up, like it's not you fucked up because you failed at this thing. If you're just making up the rules as you go, that's just cruelty. Like
I think that's what this is talking about.
But like then that's not even a role playing. That's just bullying. That's just being like a bad older sibling to like all the young cousins. Like
I mean, some folks like to be stuck in no-win situations and seeing what happens. And there are GMs who are really good at offering characters no-win situations. Where
I guess if you want to like homebrew your own like Saw role-playing system,
yeah,
where
go
it's
for
like
it.
Cut off your own feet, I guess.
It's like suffer. It's like what is the term for it? It's like suffer. It's like a suffering gauntlet or something. It's just like, how long are you willing to suffer yourself through this? You
haven't listened to the Adventure Zone
system. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Me?
No,
Sean, you haven't listened to the
I
Adventure
haven't
Zone.
listened. I haven't finished Amnesty. About halfway through that.
Did you listen to the original one?
Hell yeah.
So they went through. Have you listened to it, Em?
Yeah, I'm getting my way through it. Yeah.
Yeah, they went through an arc where it was about them suffering.
Yes, but I don't have a problem with the suffering.
No, I'm just saying
the lack of systems under it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Continue.
But he also was very much like picked on the characters as a greater story arc, just made them suffer without any real rhyme or reason.
And this is like an entire campaign of that. This is like an ongoing RPG of that. Not everyone can do that, but some people might like that. This is like, there is a DM for every table and players for every table also. So like, it's hard to feel attached to a character who's liable to die at any second, like characters are at this kind of table. Actual role play is pretty unlikely at this because you can't role play a character that you're not attached to. And parties specialized to survive through every station through like strict cooperation and a lot of luck can often become like a tedious necessity at these kind of tables.
Okay, I got it. So you're running like, because again, it's the lack of system that kills me with this. It's the chaotic nature. So you're running a loose, character-driven one-shot where you're all playing campers at like Jason Voorhees' place. Like that is what this person is for.
Sure,
and like that actually could be a lot of fun. I had to find a place for it to fit.
You had to find the table. Yeah.
Where it's just like at some point, you're all gonna die. Like going into it, you're like, yeah, we're all the campers. Maybe one of us survives.
Maybe.
That would actually be a fun game, to have a game where only one person survives, and it's like the winner is the one who survives.
Here's my pitch for the RPG game 10 Candles. 10 Candles is a beautiful, beautiful horror RPG where the basic overall story is that something arrives and starts snuffing out light in the world. And when stuff gets dark, stuff gets bad. really, really quick. So if you've got light, great. If you don't have light, you better find it quick. And it's played generally with like players sit around a table with candles in front of them, and death is a certainty. Your character will die in this game. Everyone's character will die in this game, but it's not about the outcome of death. It is about the journey towards it. And like, you have to start the game knowing that your character will die. There's an adage that goes on through every round, and it's almost like you walk through this game like a movie. So there's opening scenes and things happen. So in scene 1, this kind of thing happens and these characters interact. And then at the end of that scene, somebody dies. But you kind of walk through that scene, and the game master runs the characters through the scene. They have these like basic kind of plot points where they kind of windows in. And at the end of that, somebody's going to die, some way, shape, or form, as the characters move through the story. And at the end of the group, the characters kind of all say together, I think it's like, there is darkness in the world and we are alive. And every character goes around and speaks a truth, something that their character like did, something that is inherently true about their character or something they did in that scene. And at the end of it, the players all say together, there is darkness in the world and we are alive. And then in the very, very last scene, the GM is the person says, there's darkness in the world. And there's nothing left. And it's a beautiful game, because it's just like, it's what do you do when you're faced with when you are faced with like mortality? Like, mortality is a certainty. Your character is not gonna, you're not gonna make it through this, but you try anyway. It's fucking beautiful. That's my pitch for 10 Candles. Please go look it up if it's out there. If that kind of horror game appeals to you, I would love to run it for Blackwater one day, if anyone will actually play.
I'm 100% on board.
You're in? Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the like alignment table with respect to GM mindset, and perhaps a overgeneralization. Lawful GMs tend to go by the book and by the rules. Chaotic DMs pretend to house rule things and homebrew a lot. Good DMs are having fun when their players are having fun. Evil DMs are having fun when their players are not. That's all I got for you on GM styles and archetypes. Look at us. We've reached the end of that.
We got to all of the things.
We did. We got through all of it. Chatwater, we got
there.
This for once. We've not like, and we even spent like 25 minutes off the top talking about last session. It's good. I'm still reeling from it. I'm still thinking about it. I am like just starting the lore keeping for this session, and I'm just like bracing myself to go through all of that and watch us go through it all again. It's going to be a time.
I've really gotten into like just, if you're a lawful DM, just like picking a rules heavy system.
Yeah.
And fucking
something like Pathfinder, or something like a really, really rules heavy system.
Like, I'm thinking like lawful evil, like if the whole Warhammer 40K role playing, like the setting is so rich, and it's like, but even, oh god, I could, okay, here, let me hear my pitch for the fucking Warhammer 40K thing.
Please pitch me Warhammer 40K.
Different things that you can play in the Warhammer 40K roleplay universe. There is fucking only war, which is you're playing like Space Marines, who are like the big fucking dudes who shoot all the things, and it's just like super lethal all combat all the time. And then there's the Inquisitor or something, Dark Heresy, where you're playing just like, the important thing in the 40K universe, it's like, it is the grimdark. Like in the grimdark world of 40K, that's like how it starts, and it is oppressively bad, and like, that's why I get into it. And Dark Heresy is like, you're just like a guy or a person, like you're just bottom of the barrel, and you're like being used by the space Spanish Inquisition, and like, you're just not gonna make it out. Like, you're just gonna do your best. And then so it's like, that's like neutral, evil, all of these are lawful, and then the lawful good version is called merchant, super merchant, what the fuck, rogue trader, where like it's in this oppressive, awful, medieval in the future society. There's one type of person who gets unlimited freedom and wealth, and they are called rogue traders. And you can basically just like do
Gallivant
anything
around
in
and
the
do whatever you
world
want.
of like 40K. And I was like, oh my God, they've built a system for like the 3 tiers of DM. I was like, yeah, if you're fucking lawful
Yes,
good, you're
good.
rogue trader. Then you're only war. And like, I love this show because it's making me realize like there's a table for everybody.
Everyone.
You just gotta be at the right table with the right game and the right people. And then you'll fucking fly.
Yeah.
You'll fucking take off.
And like you can play Dungeons and Dragons with one group, but if you try and play a different game with them, it doesn't work because that group has gotten so like not reliant, but so comfortable with that, with these other people, with that DM using those kind of mechanics. Like you throw another game at them and it doesn't always work. Something I think is really great about I mean, at least for the games we've tried, like we've played with Blackwater all together, like we've played a bunch of different games with us. Like we've played The Witch is Dead together, we've played Cathedral together, we've played D&D obviously, and like I think there's so much more space for us to try a lot of other games. I'm so curious about what would be the games we don't work well with.
I'd be really interested to see us play something where it's like, yep, keep track of all them arrows. Like, I don't even know who would DM that for us.
Miss me with that. No, thank you.
I just like we would fall apart. Like it'd be awful.
Yeah.
I really like, since you said the 10 Candles thing, like I really want to play like a spooky horror RPG and then like play it in like a spooky horror setting. Like we get together at night in the dark, only candles. Like I want that sort of like tension ambiance. And yeah.
So the first time I played,
away from a Ouija board, you can get haunted, bro. You can't fuck with that.
The very first time we played, that I GM'd I was the groundskeeper for Bluebeard's Bride. It was, who was in the room? It was Trey, who we talked about before, Tim, Adam, Lucas, and a couple other folks in the room that we were playing with at the time. And if you don't know what Bluebeard's Bride is, like, please go look it up. It's a wonderful, amazing game. It's terrifying. And it's dark, real dark. So if that, like, I'll throw a big content warning on there about it. There's a lot of stuff that could be really triggering for a lot of folks. So please be careful. If like read all the content warnings and stuff like that. But when we played it in like the dead of winter in a basement with all of the lights off. And I had one candle on my table and my laptop on the dimmest setting in the dark. It was great. It's very, very good. And in that game, you play the story of Bluebeard, who is like this very cruel, callous, very rich man who marries a young bride, and the players play aspects of the bride's self. So one plays as like the fatale, one plays as the virgin, one plays as the crone, the mother, the animus, which is like the masculine energy of the character. And they like, there's a ring that's passed around about who's in control. You can force other people to do things. There's violence, there's gore, there's horror. Oh, it's a delight. It's one of my favorite games out there.
One game I've always really wanted to play that I haven't had a chance to play is Monster of the Week.
Oh, yes.
The Adventure Zone boys did it. And ever since they did it, I think, and they didn't do it quite as much as I would have liked. I enjoyed Amnesty, but I'd love to play a Monster of the Week where you lean into sort of the campiness of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where it's like, it's super campy and it's super like high school drama.
I just want to play Xander.
Yeah.
Once I found out that there's just like, because you can be like, oh, you can be Giles, like you can be the librarian, or you can be the superhero, or you can just be the mundane. You can just be a person who's like, because there's always just a person who's like, oh no, I'm in trouble. Like,
yeah. So good. So
I would love to play that, especially if you like, and that's one of the things, like, I'm not going to reveal it, but the system that we worked on, it leans into that same sort of campiness.
Yeah.
that I love.
The
Yeah.
Yeah.
Secrets. Sorry, you're seeing a little bit behind the
But-
curtain here. Secrets
but-
for things coming up.
I love that sort of campiness of like 80s movies, like, you know, like I'd love to have like an 80s movie RPG, like a Ferris Bueller, like a
Okay.
Breakfast Club, like
Hear
that
me
kind
out.
of.
Hear me out. Monster Hearts. Monster Hearts is set in a high school. It's a group of teenagers who go through high school situations, but they're also like they have monsters on the inside of them, or they're powered by monstrous energies. It's an amazing game. It's created by a fantastic person from BC, and it is just like really, really cool. I would go. It leans quite heavily into like it's a role play primary game, and the stuff gets dark and twisty pretty fast, as humans in high school tend to do. So if that's not the kind of game that you want to play, don't play it. But please go give Monster Hearts a read. Monster Hearts 1 and Monster Hearts 2. I love them both. They're very, very good.
Yeah, I recently purchased Monster Hearts.
So good.
Pre-pandemic, so I guess not recently anymore. Hoping to play it, and then it never ended up happening. But it is a great guide. I highly recommend it.
Would
and you can
happily play Monster Hearts with you anytime, Yanis.
Let's
So
do
good.
it.
Let's do it.
No, there are so many games out there, and I think that's like you were saying, Sean. Like I think that's the one thing I've realized more and more is like there is a game type for every group, and there's a group for every style of play. Don't be limited by D&D, because like I love D&D, but don't be limited by it because it's what is popular.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, oh, D&D is cool and I want to play, but I wish there was something a little bit more different about it, chances are there is a game that'll fit you.
Definitely that exists. 100%.
And if you're ever curious about what gameplay looks like, you can read rules as written on a page. But like, if you're ever curious about what gameplay looks like, put that into Twitch's search bar. There are games out there of folks playing Bluebeard's Bride. There's folks out there playing 10 Candles. There's folks out there playing Pathfinder, homebrewed games like the Cathedral we ran. Like there is so much great stuff on Twitch and on YouTube. Like if you go looking for it, it is there. So please go, and also please support the creators of these wonderful games. Buy their games rather than like finding pirated versions and stuff like that, because these creators have put a lot of time and energy into these fantastic games. Another place to I can't believe we didn't talk about Vampire the Masquerade at all as another like horror RPG that is fantastic for more like folks who tend to go into that. But Vampire the Masquerade, fantastic. Drive-Through RPG is a really great resource online that you can buy games, and the money does go directly to the creators. It is a wealth of game resources. They have a lot of D&D stuff on there, but also fantastic compendiums for a whole bunch of different kind of stuff. So it's a great place to look if you are wanting to start looking. Yeah.
I want to put it out there, and I'm scared to do it because it's an announcement for like a bigger announcement for our Blackwater D&D. But I would love if anyone is in the chat right now, if you guys want to see us play a specific type. Like if you're like, oh, we would love to see the Blackwater D&D, like whoever we can get, whoever's available from our group,
or interested
to play a type. Like if you want it, like message us on the Instagram, send us an email, like let us know. And like we do one shots once in a while, and we're always open to try games. And if there's one you really want to see us play, like let us know, because I'd love to. If we're gonna play, we've been talking a lot about playing different game types, and when we do one shots, we do like to venture outside of D&D. But we might as well play some stuff that people want to see or people are curious about. And maybe we learn some new games.
It's funny you talk about that, Yanis. Like Cathedral was actually our highest viewed like post-stream episode, like a video. It's had like our highest views, which is awesome. And it's so awesome to hear that, like, or to see that other folks want to see us playing games other than D&D. Like, please come watch us play D&D, of course. But like we do have other content out there if that's something that you like as well. So it's good.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight, guys. It is always so much fun to talk like D&D, but also like role-playing types. Like I love when we get to take a step outside of our campaign and talk about sort of like the academics behind it. It's Em is such a resource that we have with her knowledge, and it's always such a pleasure getting to pick her brain on things.
And that doesn't stop, because next week, while you might not be picking my brain about RPG theory, you get to pick my brain about Neppy. So next week is my Neppy episode of my Ask Me Anything for Nepenthe Lightkeeper. So if you have any questions that you would like me to answer about Neppy, or you have any things that you're curious about, please throw them up in the chat. We'll announce it at our stream on Saturday as well. So you're welcome to throw questions up there too, or message us on our Instagram. I'm really excited. For the very first time, I have done no show notes. In the notes, so that's gone bold and saying no show notes. You guys get to ask me anything you want about Neppy, my experiences with D&D, anything you like. We'll see if I answer it. But
Sean, we might have to do prep on this one.
Nah.
I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it at all. I don't. Roles are reversed.
No, I feel like I could talk about Neppy well past like the amount of time we allot for this show. Like, I don't think that's going to be a hard one.
It's true.
I'm excited.
Join us this Wednesday night for our Behind the Screen newest episode. We're joined by a fantastic guest. Emma, remind me of the name again.
Kyle Gould from Tavern Tales.
Yes, I'm very excited. I've never actually heard someone speak about particularly running games for children. So I'm very excited, because I think that's something that's super, super cool and like awesome to get kids involved in D&D from a younger age.
Yes.
So join us for that. And then Saturday night, we're back with
empathy. Wild.
What?
Crazy. Join us Saturday night for the regular campaign. See, what is going to happen to Blackwater as they face these moral dilemmas and the fracturing of the group. It's pretty wild. I've never seen a group come to head like that before.
And also, like, it's wild too, because like we're streaming this, and that still boggles my mind all the time that there is like videos of this, and this is being consumed by people. Like, that still boggles me sometimes, that people watched our party go through that. And I know I've always I remember when we first started playing that there was these vague, just thoughts of like, this would be so cool if, I just want to talk about this with other people also, and have, people enjoy this, and then to have it be streaming. We're really so grateful for everyone who comes out to support our stream and to come sit at our table, and like this is awesome. So thank you all so much for coming along for the ride with us.
Yeah. Yes. We will see you guys Wednesday, Saturday, and then the chatwater again Monday at 8 p.m. Good night, guys.